Now to our interview with Finland's President Alexander Stubb. We spoke this morning in New York during this week's UN General Assembly. As the leader of a NATO nation that shares an 830-mile border with Russia, Stubb has been a key voice in Europe's response to the war in Ukraine. In a speech to the UN Security Council this past week, he welcomed what he called an apparent shift in tone on Ukraine and Russia by President Trump. I asked him, given the contradictory statements by the Trump administration on the war, including the claim that Ukraine will be able to win back territory now under Russian control, why he believes President Trump's latest words carry weight.
My first observation is that never underestimate the capacity of President Trump to negotiate a deal. And I think peace mediation is always incremental. You go step by step. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think what I've found in this 8 months is that we've had a process. First there's been a lot of carrot. So you try to convince Putin to come to the negotiating table. And when you see that the carrot is not necessarily working, you put down a stick. And what we saw on Tuesday was a big statement from the president.
Do you think Vladimir Putin perceives Donald Trump to be strong? I mean, there are dispassionate observers who say that President Trump has avoided holding Vladimir Putin accountable.
Well, I can't go into the head of President Putin, but of course, looking at the track record of President Trump, I'm sure as a Russian president I'd be worried. When he says that the Russian economy is not doing well, or that the Russian military has made a strategic mistake and they should pay for it, I mean, I'm sure the Kremlin is listening. So I do think that the Kremlin sees President Trump as a strong president.
The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, in a tweet, said that behind Trump's optimism lies a promise of reduced U.S. involvement and a shift of responsibility for ending the war to Europe. Do you see it that way?
No, I see it as teamwork. So basically, before Alaska, we had a lot of conversations with the president. He comes back from Alaska. We continue the conversations in the White House. And at that stage, we decided, okay, let's start working on security guarantees for Ukraine. They're pretty much a done deal now. Then after that, he, I would say, correctly says, you need to stop buying Russian oil and gas. We point the finger at Hungary and Slovakia. So that puts pressure on Europe. But I don't see it at all as an off-ramp. I think that's a wrong analysis. I think it's very much teamwork, and the only person that can end this war is President Trump.
So this isn't President Trump washing his hands, essentially?
No, I don't see that at all, because if you look at President Trump's engagement just during this UN week in different types of peace mediation, earlier it was about Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's been obviously about Israel and Palestine. So he has a lot of things going on, and one can focus on only so many things at a time.
If the U.S. commitment wavers again, how will Finland, how will Europe insulate Ukraine from that uncertainty?
Well, we work on it together, so there are many different elements. I mean, first we need to continue the financial support, and of course Europe is doing a lion's share of that together with the United States. Secondly, we need to continue the military support in terms of equipment, in terms of co-production, in terms of ammunition. And then thirdly, we need to continue to keep the financial pressure up on Russia. And the EU, the European Union, just issued its 19th sanction package. So we need to sort of maximize the pressure on Putin, which would then switch his strategic aim, because he hasn't changed his strategic aim. That is still to deny the independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. If he understands that Europeans and Americans are united to support Ukraine, he will probably change tack.
How do the airspace violations play into Putin's strategic game, to use your phrase? Russia, over the past few weeks, has violated the airspace of Estonia, of Poland, has violated Finnish airspace over the last few years. What do you think they're up to?
Russia is testing us. They are conducting 2 types of warfare. One is kinetic, classic, that's what we see in Ukraine. And the other one is hybrid. And they're testing us on land, air and sea. So on land, a year and a half ago, they kept on sending asylum seekers, basically instrumentalizing them at our border, which is a heinous crime. But we put up legislation to deter that. Then over the winter, on Christmas Day, they cut cables in the Baltic Sea. We put up the Baltic Sentry operation, quote unquote, by NATO. So they've stopped that. And now they're testing us in the air. We put the Eastern Sentry from the alliance. In my mind, in these situations, you kind of have to be Finnish. So stay calm. The more you prepare, the less likely he's there to continue.
You've said that Ukraine, when it engages in peace talks, should start from a position of strength. What does that look like in practical terms?
Well, in practical terms, it looks like pretty much the following. One, they have security guarantees. So they take full responsibility of their own security, but they're supported by Europe and given a backstop from the US. Secondly, they have enough military equipment so that Russia understands that they can be hit, let's say, by long-range drones, which hit their strategic bombers up close to Murmansk, 3,000-4,000 kilometers away from Ukraine. And then finally, that at the end of the day, Ukraine will never become Russian. It becomes European, a member of the European Union, eventually, hopefully, a member of NATO in the long run. And that, I think, would give them a position of strength.
Given Finland's position on the border with Russia, how do you balance deterrence with diplomacy?
Right now, unfortunately, we don't have much diplomacy on a political level because of the situation, but we do, of course, have diplomats discussing, and we have practical arrangements. You see, Finland joined NATO not against Russia, but just to protect ourselves. The opinion polls in Finland changed overnight, or actually over 3 nights. Now, NATO membership has 80% support. How do we continue the deterrence? Well, do what we've been doing. We have obligatory military service, 900,000 men and women that have done it. We have 280,000 in reserves for wartime. We have over 60 F-18s. We just bought 64 F-35s. We have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. And as I always say, we don't have it because we're worried about Stockholm.
When this administration asks, what is Europe doing to maintain and to provide for Ukraine's security, what's Finland's answer?
Well, our answer is that per capita we are the 5th or 6th biggest provider of support to Ukraine when it comes to finance, when it comes to military equipment, when it comes to ammunition. And I also want to see basically the eastern flank starting from the high north, from Norway, through Finland, the Baltic states, a little bit of an interim with Belarus, and then Ukraine is about 5,000 kilometers. The biggest armies in Europe pretty much right now are Turkey, Ukraine, and Poland, and Finland. So we've got the eastern flank covered.
President Stubb, thanks again. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.